What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So, bipartisan senators introduced primary and secondary Russia sanctions. That is right. So, Donald Trump come out the other day and said he's pissed off at Putin right now, and he is thinking about issuing more sanctions onto Russia.
Would you say your relationship with Vladimir Putin is at its lowest point right now?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he's going to go back on his word. You're talking about Putin. I don't think he's going to go back on his word. I've known him for a long time. We've always gotten along well, despite the Russia hoax. It's a hoax created by Clinton and Schiff and all of these lunatics. And that really was a dangerous point. That was a very dangerous thing they did to this country. It was a pure, unadulterated scam, hoax. But no, I think he'll be okay. But if he isn't, I was disappointed in a certain way. Some of the things that were said over the last day or two having to do with Zelensky, because when he considers Zelensky not credible, he's supposed to be making a deal with him, whether you like him or you don't like him. So I wasn't happy with that. But I think he's going to be good. And I certainly wouldn't want to put secondary tariffs on Russia, but if they were put on, it would not be very good for them.
Well, here we go, folks. Putin doesn't want to play ball. He's starting to call, Zelensky an illegitimate president, trying to sack these peace negotiations, right? Now, I can hear what the leftists are saying. We told you so. We told you so. Yeah, sure. Fine. Whatever. It's not over yet. But I think Donald Trump is going to bully Putin into these peace negotiations. I think Putin is just playing games right now. And we all know that. Putin likes to play games. So we're going to see. He's going to issue these sanctions. And they are kind of extreme. Right? What Trump is doing is it kind of blows apart the narrative that Trump is a Putin puppet, if you will. Check this out, y'all. Senator Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal introduced legislation on Tuesday seeking to impose primary and secondary sanctions against Russia if it does not agree to long-lasting peace with its neighboring country, Ukraine. Now, I have questions. How come this wasn't done a long time ago, you guys? Like, why wait? Was it been a little bit over 3 years? Insane. The two were joined by a group of 50 lawmakers who agreed to support sanctions on Russia in addition to a 500% tariff on imported goods from countries that buy Russian oil, gas, uranium, and other products if efforts to end the war are not advanced. That is some of the most insane tariffs I think I've ever seen or heard of. As a matter of fact, this is going to force Putin to the negotiating table, as a matter of fact, in my opinion, right? Because that is an insane tariff. You want to talk about raising prices, that will definitely raise some prices. That will raise a lot of prices. This will put the hurting so bad on any countries that do any sort of dealings with Russia. They will immediately stop doing dealings with Russia. Like, how come we haven't ramped up production of oil and natural gas in this country? Why? Because the climate zealots have a louder voice than your average everyday person. At least that's what I think, right? Because they're the ones gnashing, screaming, yelling, all this other stuff about the climate. Well, you know what? There's not much we can do about the climate. Seriously, like stopping all of this, like if we just shut down the oil industry right now, that's not going to stop the amount of carbon dioxide that's in the atmosphere, right? Just blanketly, straight up. Because China produces a lot. All these other countries, we would have to shut it down worldwide, and that's still not going to fix the situation. We would have to actively remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Now, the planet will fix itself, but when we're talking about planetary scales, we're talking about planetary scales. As a matter of fact, that would take place over tens of thousands of years. Yeah, tens of thousands of years. So, just shutting down, destroying civilization, yeah, what that would do. Yeah, that's not how you fix the climate. We keep innovating and innovating and innovating our way through climate change, as a matter of fact, because, yeah, the climate is changing. We're not 100% sure if it's man-made, that we are leaning in that direction, right? But, see, I think that just shutting all this stuff down is just insane. You're going to destroy civilization to save the planet when we could just keep pushing and figure out ways to fix the planet on our own. That's all I'm saying. How the hell do we get off from sanctions onto some climate agenda nonsense? I have no idea. The sanctions against Russia require tariffs on countries who purchase Russian oil, gas, uranium, and other products. They are hard-hitting for a reason, the senators wrote in a Tuesday release. The dominating view in the United States Senate is that Russia is the aggressor and that this horrific war and Putin's aggression must end now and be deterred in the future, they added. Totally agree with all of that. As a matter of fact, airstrikes on Ukrainian infrastructure have continued to claim lives as both Russia and neighboring Eastern European nations have agreed to eliminate the use of force in the Black Sea and end strikes on energy facilities for 30 days. The small step toward peace came a week after the Kremlin struck the Donetsk region in Ukraine on the same day after President Trump threatened to impose sanctions on Moscow in an effort to drive ceasefire negotiations. The president has expressed vexation with his counterpart Vladimir Putin for stalling methods to end the foreign conflict. Yeah, he's pissed. He is outright pissed. If I think they're tapping us along, I will not be happy about it, Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One on Sunday, referring to the situation abroad. Senators who signed on to impose primary and secondary sanctions against Russia shared the same sense of annoyance with Putin over thwarted peace efforts. We share President Trump's frustration with Russia when it comes to obtaining a ceasefire and support President Trump's desire to achieve a lasting, just, and honorable peace. In 1994, as part of the Budapest Memorandum, Ukraine gave up approximately 1,700 nuclear weapons when they promised from the U.S., Russia, and United Kingdom that Ukraine's sovereignty would be honored in the future. This failed to deter Russian aggression, the senators said. Yeah, there was other things, right? There was instigations on that, as a matter of fact. We also agreed that NATO would not expand to the east, and as a matter of fact, it did. In 2014 and 15, the Minsk agreements were reached to end Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but again, it did nothing to deter future aggression. Now, I wonder what happened. What happened in 2015 that stopped Putin from invading Ukraine? Oh, Trump got elected. That's right. And as soon as Trump came out of office, what happened? Oh, Russia started building up forces along the border. Interesting, that is. In 2022, Russia invaded once more, leading to deaths of hundreds of thousands of people and the displacement of millions. During the talks in Saudi Arabia, Russia's negotiators urged the U.S. to help lift sanctions on Russian banks and promote Russian fertilizer and agriculture on the world market before agreeing to a ceasefire. It is our hope that in 2025, President Trump and his team will achieve what has eluded the world in the past, ending Russian aggression against Ukraine permanently and ensuring the survivability of a free and democratic Ukraine, the legislators wrote. These sanctions against Russia are at the ready and will receive overwhelming bipartisan bicameral support if presented to the Senate and House for a vote. I agree, they probably will. Because, once again, we need to stop all this. As a matter of fact, here's a list of all of the senators, the co-sponsors of this legislation, and there is a lot. I am not going to read them. I normally do read them, but I'm not going to because, as you can see, that list is quite extensive. Yes, very extensive. But, you know, this needs to come to an end. We've been playing around with this for way too long. You find it funny. You really do. That, you know, that Putin has only been aggressive, if you will, which he is being aggressive with Ukraine. But it's only aggression under a Democratic president. Didn't do this under Trump. I wonder why. He could have definitely not stopped, right? They could have signed that agreement a couple of years later. He could have invaded Ukraine. like the Donetsk and Luhansk regions and all that. He wants that land bridge, as a matter of fact. And I think that was the intent. He's going to wait out Donald Trump, wait till Biden comes in or somebody else, right? You know, I can almost guarantee you that if Donald Trump would have won in 2020, that, we wouldn't be talking about this right now, as a matter of fact. But hopefully this pushes Putin to actually come to the table, stop playing these freaking games, and end these hostilities in Ukraine. But once again, it's going to come down to Putin is going to want to keep access to the Black Sea. He is not going to give that land up without a fight. I can almost guarantee that. Which, at this point, I personally don't care, to be honest with you. I really don't. It is what it is, right? Like, that's Russia and Ukraine. I really don't care. Ukraine is a corrupt nation. So is Russia. That has nothing to do with the United States. It does not affect European sovereignty. It does not affect U.S. national security, as a matter of fact. So none of those excuses are going to work. You know, Putin is not some conqueror or anything like that. He's not going to go into Poland. He's not going to go into NATO territories. That would be suicide. We all know this. I'm tired of the fear-mongering from the left, from a lot of these war hawks, from the neocons and all these people. I'm tired of all that fear-mongering. We know it's BS. We know it's not true. It doesn't make logical sense for Putin to invade NATO. So, you guys need to stop with all that crap. Shut your mouths, and let's actually figure out how we can work some sort of agreement to where Putin can get his little land bridge, he can have his access to the Black Sea, and Ukraine can retain sovereignty, for crying out loud. Now, I've already proposed before that, they create some sort of economic corridor, a neutral zone, give him a little bit like some highway or something, right? Allow him to keep Crimea, because they already had a naval base in Crimea, for crying out loud, which that was a tenuous situation. Ever since the fall of the Soviet Union, that's been weird going on, because you got a Russian base in another sovereign nation that you're not really friendly with. But, being friendly, that kind of goes back and forth. It depends on who the president is. And, Zelensky and, what was his name? Yanukovych, I believe, was the previous president, weren't really friendly with Putin, I don't believe. Yanukovych may have been. It goes back and forth, but who really cares, right? Like, I'm not a geopoliticist, if you will, but, all this needs to come to an end. That the left and Democrats, the corporate press, need to stop fear-mongering, and let's figure out some sort of pathway to peace. But in the meantime, if Russia wants to play games, then we should play ball. And as a matter of fact, we should play basketball while they're trying to play soccer. And just beat the hell out of them with sanctions, with whatever we can do, right? It wouldn't surprise me, because this is pissing off Donald Trump, if Donald Trump doesn't show up in force with the U.S. military or the U.S. Navy in the Black Sea and try to force some sort of showdown or something like that, right? Like, that's not what we want, but it wouldn't surprise me if that happened, just because of how much Putin is pissing off Donald Trump on this. He seems to be aggravated as hell. And hey, I totally agree. Donald Trump is working in good faith for these peace negotiations with two actors he really doesn't like, he really doesn't care about. He sees them as an obstruction getting in his way. They are stopping his agenda, and he wants them to get out of the way. They're being very petty. Once again, Zelensky is being just as petty as Putin is. Right? Zelensky does not appear to want peace. He wants to boot out. He wants regime change in Russia. And I'm sorry, you can't do that being the president of another nation. That's just not how countries work, by the way. It's not how the world works. The voters in that nation get to decide who the president of that nation is, right? I know that's air quotes, because nobody believes that the elections in Russia are free and fair and totally legitimate, right? Nobody believes that. But once again, what can we do about it? There is no world government. Thank God. right? Because we don't like these global elitists. We don't like these people at all. We don't like being ruled by one world government. Now, I will say, and this is a little bit biased, that if we did have a world government, I would prefer it to be the United States, a government of that fashion. But at the same time, you know, that would become, you know, kind of a bad situation too, if you will, because if we can't get 435 congressmen to agree, how the hell do we expect we're going to get the entire world to agree on legislation? Nothing will get done. This is why world governments ultimately will not work until we have a homogenized population, if you will. Ideologically, that is. You know, pretty much ideologically homogenized. Yeah, that's not going to happen. That's probably not ever going to happen. You know, humans are going to have to evolve a lot mentally for us to get to a place where that happens. It's like, what do we do about that, right? Like, what happens if, like, I don't know how many of you guys know Star Trek. What if we come to find out that there's all these other planets and there's this, you know, federation, if you will, you know, a coalition of different planets that, you know, all come together, have an alliance? What do we do at that point? How do we justify having these petty squabbles over land bridges and things like that when you know the world is much bigger than we thought, if you will? I say the world, but it would be the universe at that point. It's much bigger than we thought. What do we do at that point? We have to evolve. We have to think greater than just this planet. We have to think, you know, we could all come together and work together. But once again, we need to do a little bit of evolution for us to get to that point, I believe, because we are not ready. And we prove that every single day. Prove that every single day. But I think I've rambled on for long enough on this one. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comments section. And that's all I got, y'all. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you're new around here. I would greatly appreciate if you could also share this video. That would be lovely if you could do that. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.